Was Abraham Lincoln a president?
Yes.
Oh, I thought he was just a whatever publical figure.
Welcome back to Delulu Diaries, where the timelines don't match, but the receipts always do. Today we're going to be looking at a couple of different personality disorders, and because I myself don't have any formal training in psychology, it's just an interest of mine, I'm going to be referencing Dr. Kirk Honda's video on these disorders. He is here on YouTube under Psychology in Seattle. He's really, really great, so I absolutely recommend checking him out if you guys are interested in that kind of thing. I do want to say, because of the nature of this video, before we get in, just remember not to send any hate to anybody mentioned in today's video, and that even though I am referencing a real psychologist for educational purposes, this is not a diagnosis. Nobody but a specialized therapist who is viewing Amberlynn in person can make a diagnosis. So everything we talk about today is just purely either speculation, opinion, or for, like I said, educational purposes to learn a little bit more about these disorders. So with all that said, let's dive in.
Hey, deserving listeners. Today I'm going to talk about the differences and similarities between narcissistic personality disorder, borderline personality disorder, and histrionic personality disorder. These labels are constructs. They're not scientific, hard science things. So they're things that we socially construct in our profession and in academia. And so by definition, you're going to have different opinions about them. And all this is based on 20-something years of me studying these personality disorders and treating them and getting supervision and consultation around people who present this way. So my thesis in this episode is that narcissistic, borderline, histrionic, they're really very, very similar. There's a lot of overlap. In fact, research shows that among narcissistic and borderline, 25% of people will they'll be diagnosed with both.
I wanted to include that just so you could see what his expertise is, but just to make sure that you guys understand fully what he's saying, these are disorders that are in the DSM-5, at least at the time of him publishing this video. However, every therapist is going to interpret the signs differently, but he is saying that it is possible and likely to have multiple of these disorders. So he's saying if you have narcissistic, that doesn't rule you out or exclude you from having bipolar or histrionic. I think that the thing that I'm thinking is that Amberlynn claims to have borderline, and a lot of people think that she has narcissistic personality disorder, where my personal opinion going into this is that I believe that she has at least narcissistic tendencies, and I believe she has histrionic personality disorder.
So for narcissistic personality disorder, borderline personality disorder, and histrionic personality disorder, they all have very similar beginnings. The people when they're younger have very similar experiences growing up. There's slight differences commonly, but really you can generalize pretty well in that they all experience mistreatment, either through abuse early in life or neglect early in life or abandonment or other kinds of mistreatment.
Amberlynn, look at that for do no cooking.
I see those videos and I hear my mom say my name and my dad laughing, and it breaks my heart. I looked so happy. My parents sounded happy, and I literally just want to take that little girl and hold her and hug her and in a way warn her that things are going to get rough. Your life is going to take a turn. I lived with my parents for most of my years inside of a trailer. It was run down, it was moldy, it was beat, it was just, to be honest, it was gross. I'm surprised people even came over to visit and be my friend.
As I got older, I started realizing more so that my parents weren't like normal parents. Their location of using drugs was in the bathroom. So every time I'd go in there, I knew that when they came out, they'd be a different person.
They did like every drug imaginable. They would go in the bathroom. That is where they would do their drug of choice, and they'd be in there for hours and hours and hours a day. When they would leave that bathroom, I don't know if they were gonna be like super hyper, I want to clean everything, oh my god, I talk so fast, I'm gonna be up for like 3 days. I didn't know if they were gonna be out screaming at me for every little thing ever, slamming things, throwing things, breaking each other's bones. I didn't know if they were gonna come out like unable to even speak, loaded out of their brains, like can't even function. They think a backpack is a dog. So I never knew what was gonna happen. There, more times than none, they would come out loaded. They would be sweaty, itchy. They wouldn't be able to like do anything without nodding out. It was traumatizing as a little girl, hard to go through, hard to watch, hard to see.
So anybody who has followed Amber for any length of time knows that regardless of the truth of statements in how bad her past was, she definitely did have a rough childhood, and nobody can really take that away from her. I know a lot of people try to say that every time she brings it up, it's not an excuse, and I agree it's not an excuse, but in this video, we are looking at the severity of her past as a way to explain how she may have developed these personality disorders and to kind of shed some light onto how they come about. So it's not like you can just be born and have a crazy personality disorder. It does have to come from somewhere. And clearly through these clips, we can see that Amber was experiencing mistreatment, neglect, things of that nature. I mean, when she talks about how her parents would go do substances and she never knew what parent she was coming back, that shows you right there, she really could not depend on her parents to get the kind of love and nurturing that she should have been able to rely on them for, especially at those younger ages.
Sometimes this mistreatment is quite obvious, like being sexually abused or physically abused.
As a little girl, my dad would push me into a corner and he would spit loogies in my face, calling me every fat name that I could even think of imaginable. It was probably the hardest for me hearing it come from my dad. I almost expected it from kids at school, but not from my own father.
I do believe Amber on this account because we know that her dad does have an arrest record for domestic mistreatment. Her mom has also backed up this claim, and obviously you can just search that up. Arrest records are public records. So I believe that she was going through not only neglect, but also mistreatment at the hands of her father.
But sometimes it's less obvious, like if a parent was depressed or your family were refugees from war or something. So you might look to your family and you might think, well, I love my family. My family's been really great. But because your family was great, but there were things that resulted in your parents' ability to care for you as a child was compromised, and therefore you are at greater risk of developing a personality disorder.
I saw my dad hit my mom more times than I can even count. When I was like really young, living with my parents and traumatic things were happening, my grandma, who I love dearly, she would try to protect me from all that and distract me in the best way that she knew how. So she would take a piece of paper. This was like when I was literally 5. She would take a piece of paper and like squiggle all over it and then have me color it.
So again, her living situation was really bad. And even though you can have moments of happiness or joy or things that you look back fondly, that doesn't exclude you from the possibility of having a traumatic childhood. Like, it doesn't have to be black and white, 100% bad in order for this to affect you. So even though Amber will occasionally mention happy memories from being a child, she does still have obviously the basis for getting one of these disorders. And I think that everybody pretty much knows that. But I did want to include this clip as well because she does talk about how in order to distract her from the mistreatment going on in her house, that her family member would sit down and draw and have her color and fill in paper so that she would be kind of distracted from all of that. And as we know, one of the few things that is a part of Amberlynn's key personality, not her mirroring other people, is the fact that she does like to color. And so when I saw this clip, I was like, oh my gosh, I wonder if her coloring is like a coping strategy that she's carried on with her from childhood for how to ignore it when things are getting a little too like difficult for her to process.
So all 3 of these personality disorders in my experience, have almost identical childhood histories, but there are factors that will push people to one of the three. And there are many, many factors, of course, and people are very complex, and it's a system. So there's like the child is interacting with the family system, which is interacting with society, which is interacting with, culture. And, there's billions upon billions of factors, and there's no way to reduce it all. But in a nutshell, it all depends on what the child learns in terms of how they get love and attention and how they cope. So if the child learns that they can get, so I'll start by saying the baseline, the child is not getting enough love and attention. That's an important, so because of the mistreatment, not only are they made to feel worthless and they're in pain and demoralized, but they also are not getting enough love and attention. And so the child will figure out ways to try to get a little bit of love and attention from parents or caregivers or other people. So during childhood, if the child learns that they can get a little bit of love and attention by being the star and being awesome, or by being hyper independent, like I don't need anybody, I'm fine, even as a young child, then that child will likely develop narcissistic personality disorder.
When I was 5, I actually dressed up as a Dalmatian for Halloween, and I was in a Halloween costume contest, and I won first place, and I was in the newspaper from it.
When I was 4, I choked on a lifesaver. Isn't that ironic? Because I heard that the lifesaver actually has a hole in the middle to prevent choking, and so you can still breathe when you choke on it, if you choke on it. But I did choke, and I wasn't breathing, I couldn't talk, and my mom didn't know what to do, so she hurried up, called 911, and they showed up and thankfully saved my life. And they actually gave me a teddy bear with the firefighter suit on the teddy bear, and I named the teddy bear Lifesaver, and I was in the newspaper. So, I love dancing, which a lot of people know that, and so we were at a school dance, and we didn't know it, but the DJ was actually judging us on our dancing, and we didn't even know it, okay? So at the end of the dance, he says, I've been watching y'all. Okay, it's kind of creepy, actually. I've been watching y'all, and I choose 3 winners of who danced the best, in my opinion.
Oh.
And I was the first one. I was like, what? Okay.
How you doing?
Crystal and I won the Halloween costume contest. Like, okay. But I didn't want to accept the prize. I'm a very shy person, and they were gonna have us go on stage and stuff like that. So I just didn't do it. So I didn't accept the prize. We're supposed to be back over there and stuff, like accepting the prize and all that stuff, but I just didn't even want to go there. So we're gonna skip the raffle and all that stuff. I'm dying of thirst. I had so much fun. I can't believe I did it. An obese girl. And the whole time, people were like, yeah, go Kitty. They kept calling me Kitty and stuff. It was so funny, but it felt good to be, rooted on like that.
So I believe that her experiences as a child of getting into the newspaper really led her to see that those are ways that she could get some of the love and attention that she was so desperately missing. So the first one, she talks about how she went into a little costume contest at the age of 5, which, keep in mind, Dr. Honda does say that ages 6 and below is the key development time for these disorders. And so I don't know what was going on in her day-to-day, but from what she has said on the internet, at age 5, she had entered a costume contest and had won and was put in the newspaper, which there is no article in the newspaper for her having ever won a contest. Septa7, I believe, is their username. I'm going to link their video down below. I got most of her childhood clips from them. They did a really good job putting it together, and I used barely any of their videos, so I strongly recommend you check them out. But anyway, she did the research to see if she could find anything in the newspaper. She really scoured through and could not find anything. So I believe that this is also where Amber started to develop her sense of making stories grander, lying by just making everything seem so much bigger than what it really is. And as you could see, I clipped in some parts from her being an adult as well, where she uses similar strategies. So as a child, she got put in the newspaper supposedly for winning a costume contest and for almost choking on that lifesaver. And then as an adult, we can see her talking about being in dance competitions when she was younger and winning stuff like that. So I believe that from what we can extrapolate from what she's saying, usually those were probably the only times that she really had full focus, where her parents would be like, oh my gosh, you won something. That's amazing, Amber. And like maybe they would go to the award ceremony or picking up or whatever. And that's where she kind of got the majority of her love and care and attention from. As well as the fact that if you remember, she said that she had that whole time when she was with Feline where she choked on the potato. And it became a really big deal in girl world. And I recall Beck saying that that did not happen. I don't remember where I saw that, but I remember Beck clearly saying that she made up the potato story. Why would she do that? But then I thought, okay, well, we saw that she said that she got a lot of attention from being in the newspaper for choking on the lifesaver. This was a time when she was not getting very much attention on YouTube. I wonder if she made that story up because she was reflecting on her childhood and, oh, when I choked on that lifesaver, I got a lot of attention. So maybe I can replicate that now as an adult, if that makes sense. Also, with that last clip that I cut in where she's with Crystal talking about the contest and that she's too shy to go get the prize, we all know that at that time she was mirroring Crystal's personality and Crystal was shy, but she even admits right then and there that it felt really good to be getting all of that positive reinforcement from people on how cute their costumes were. So I feel strongly that she really does thrive on the energy and attention she gets from winning these competitions.
If the child learns that they can get a little bit of love and attention by being hyper aware of the emotional state of their parents or their caregivers, then they are likely to develop borderline. This is a preoccupied attachment style, if you're familiar.
Check out my cake.
It's sugar-free.
Yes, it is. I'm excited.
I don't remember anything about it. I don't remember any of it. I was misdiagnosed with bipolar type 2 and was taking an array of medicine trying to figure out what's going on with me. And in turn, it pretty much turned me into a zombie. I don't remember anything about this, but a lot of people knew how I was acting really weird. I was zombied out of my head, and I moved very slowly.
What happened, babe?
My piece fell apart.
I'm gonna get yours.
She looks happy.
Mm-hmm.
Why were you completely unable to recognize how Beck felt and their emotions for the entirety of your 4-year relationship? Well, you have to be more specific, because sometimes I did know exactly how they felt because they told me. And I'm realizing that there was a lot of times that they lied. I think a really good example of that would be like choosy, or like when they would give me like the anxiety massage. It's just like partner emotional regulation, like making your partner feel good and safe and loved. They really liked when I would do this. So that was like my thing that I did for them. And it's like, I almost feel like I was a burden to them. Moments that I thought we were actually genuinely bonding.
So Amber claims all the time to be extremely empathetic, that she feels what other people are feeling, that she has this great intuition. And yet we can see just from 2019 alone that there were so many times where it was obvious to everybody, Beck's family, people watching on the internet who didn't even get to see everything, that Beck was really going through it, that Beck was not all there, that Beck was struggling, and Amber couldn't see what was in front of her eyes. Now, I think it's very easy to say that Amber did see what was going on, but that she just didn't care. But that is not my opinion. If that's your opinion, then sound off in the comments below, because I am curious to hear everybody's opinions on these kinds of things. But to me, I believe that Amber was wrapped up in herself, and because of that, she genuinely, truly did not see how Beck was feeling. And even in these clips, you can see that she says, what do you mean that I didn't always know? There were times that I did know because Beck told me, but sometimes they lied. And it's like, okay, but you shouldn't need somebody to tell you how they're feeling. That is a little beside the point, though, because the whole reason I included this is because she claims she's been diagnosed with borderline, which a key sign of borderline is knowing how somebody is feeling and being able to adapt to that. So basically, in childhood, you learn, like, oh, if I can sense when my parents' moods shift, then I can, kind of take control of that and either soothe it out before it becomes a dangerous, scary situation for me, or I can alter my personality so they don't get to a level 10 if they're at a level 2 right now. And I truly feel that if she had borderline and was able to sense shifts in moods like that, that she wouldn't do the things that she does. Because I clipped in where Beck was talking about not being understood, but we can see in Amber's past all the times that she has included people in her vlogs where they clearly really, really do not want to be included in the vlog. They don't want to be on screen. She bulldozes right over those thoughts and feelings. She does not come off as empathetic at all. She has tons of moments of being emotionally cold, not understanding what's going on, not being able to read the room. And if she had borderline personality disorder, as she claims to be diagnosed with, I think that she would be a lot better at being able to sense those things. And with the way that she gets hate for that online, I think that she would police herself a little bit better.
Whereas if the child learns that they can get a little bit of love and attention by being seductive or highly expressive with their emotions, then they're likely to develop histrionic.
So on a sticky note, I wrote in second grade, I wrote, "Will you have sex with me?" And I was going to give it to my friend who was coming to my house that day.
And in another post, she said, "I bullied a little girl when I was 7 and purposely broke her glasses."
So unlike with borderline, where she does not meet the key childhood development of being able to anticipate what people are feeling and adjust accordingly, with histrionic, she does meet the barrier. Not only do we know that to this day, Amberlynn tries to utilize her sexuality as a way to garner attention in ways such as all of her TikToks where she does these little thirst traps, as well as on the LCU, whenever she felt like she was being ignored, she would insult people and get very sexual. She also does the secondary part of that, which is making things a lot more grandiose than they would be. Part of that is the bullying. Like, instead of just, letting things slide or not reacting, she does have these explosive moments where, as a child, she was bullying other children. And as an adult, I would argue that she bullies other adults. And we can see in this slide that I have here on the screen, which is from a, camp where they are supposed to help troubled children, which I do not agree with that, but because they do have an expertise in child psychology, I wanted to quote this. It says, "Often children who suffer from attention-seeking disorder and participate in bullying have BPD or HD, which is supposed to be histrionic personality disorder. They just forgot to put the P in there. The attention seeker creates a stress situation for another person. Next, he or she gets attention through the laughter, approval, or even disapproval of onlookers. Lastly, the bully gets attention from the parents. It doesn't matter to the bully if the attention is positive or negative. From this point, the attention seeker can also switch from bullying to drama queen or even victim themselves. Each stage brings another level of attention." I don't know about you, but I can see those same patterns in Amberlynn today. She does tend to bully people as a attention-seeking method. She did it with Narcolerk when she was talking about the sympathy bone situation, and then when she realized that the person that she was with wasn't laughing, she suddenly decided to switch tactics to being like, "Oh, I was just joking, even though clearly she was not. And then during her time on the LCU, when she was actually surrounded by people for once, we saw the same thing, that as soon as she felt that the attention was straying from her or that she was not being brought up enough, she resorted to name calling and bullying, which, let me be clear, other people on the LCU were also engaging in bullying behavior towards Amberlynn as well. So I'm not saying that she was just being horrible in a perfect situation, but I am saying that this is something that we can see has followed her through life, where she thinks that that kind of behavior is okay. Also, in the little bullying blurb, it says that they get attention from the parents because obviously the parents will be notified of the bullying going on at school. And so that could be playing a key factor in how Amberlynn did develop whatever personality disorders that she does have, because she has admitted to having at least one. And so, this shows me that her way of getting attention was not only with the contests and things of that nature, but also through darker means of bullying other children. It also says that it doesn't matter if it's positive or negative attention, which we can see with her online platform. How many times has she threatened to quit because of the negative attention and that she wants it to be positive, but she keeps coming back because to her, while she would prefer positive attention, negative attention is just as good because all she wants is to be known, to be seen, to be recognized as somebody more than just a nobody in this world. I've also literally seen her switch from doing bullying, lashing out tactics to becoming a victim herself. When she was going through the breakup with Beck, Amber said so many nasty things about Beck, and then when Beck turned around to defend themselves and honestly was still pretty reserved in what information they released to the public, suddenly Amber was like, oh my gosh, I get it, I'm a terrible person, I did this, that, and the third, but you guys don't understand what Beck put me through, blah, blah, blah. So that's a perfect example right there of her switching from lashing out at Beck because she didn't think that Beck was going to respond to suddenly switching the act up and becoming a victim to get attention for herself and try to flip the switch, which yes is also a part of Darvo before you guys mention that, but I just want to put that in with the bullying here while we're talking about this topic. Now, the last part of the bullying blurb does reference ODD, which is oppositional defiant disorder. And I did look it up. It says that it does not directly cause histrionic personality disorder. However, severe or untreated ODD does increase the risk of developing a broader cluster B personality disorder, which could be histrionic personality disorder, or it could also be bipolar personality disorder in adulthood. So basically ODD, which is a linked factor to bullying, can lead to a cluster B personality disorder. And so I felt like that was important to put in here as well.
So again, the keys here are that the people are, as young children, we're talking like, pre 6 years old, they are mistreated somehow, which leads to one, they're being taught that people would not really be there for them unless they took drastic actions to get whatever little bit of love and attention that they can get.
When my brother was born, he was so adorable and gosh, I loved him. As days went on, I did kind of take the role of being a parent in a way. I still remember one time in particular when my parents were on so many drugs that they were like passed out. My baby brother was crying and I wasn't sure why, so I went into the room of where they were, and it was because his crib was by a curtain and the curtain string was wrapped around his neck. I will never forget that day as long as I live. Even now it's emotional for me. His face was purple, he was screaming and crying, and to put it shortly, I had to save his life. And I did. And then I realized that I don't think my parents will ever change. I was a 9-year-old. And I was taking on the role of being a mother.
As Dr. Kirk Honda says about people with these disorders, we can see that Amber herself in this clip says that she realized that her mom was never going to be there the way that she needed her to be. Same with her father. Like, she just could not rely on her parental figures. And sadly, she realized at the same time that neither could her family, her brothers. So, very, very tragic backstory. I think that we can all agree that her upbringing was not good, but it is a absolute storm for making one of these personality disorders.
And the mistreatment also results in that they weren't given a chance to develop a sense of self. So they can't soothe themselves. They don't really know who they are, and they're not really connected with their emotions. They don't really know what they want. This is a very important stage of life that kids are given the opportunity to develop a sense of self early in life, say, between the ages of 3 and 5, 2 and 5 or something. And when you're neglected, you're not given a chance to develop that sense of self.
It's just like partner emotional regulation. Like,
I do believe that Amber has a very difficult time regulating her own emotions. I think that she's pretty much admitted that with the multiple times that she's come on camera and said that because of her BPD, she has a hard time controlling what she says, that she has these meltdowns and she doesn't really know how to get out of it. And then as we can see, even when she's talking about how she didn't know what Beck was going through during their relationship, she mentions partner emotional regulation, meaning that she feels that it is a partner's job to help you emotionally regulate. And that makes so much sense when you think about how she interacts with her partners and why she expects them to be there for her 24/7. I mean, in almost every relationship, I believe she has mentioned that she gets extremely upset when her partners are not there for her. And that makes sense if you believe that your partner is there to be your emotional regulation. And that makes sense if you are relying on your partner to do the emotional regulation for you. We can recall back to when she was with Destiny and she was calling Destiny on lunch breaks to the point where Destiny wanted to skip one lunch break, and Amber just flipped her shit when she found out that there was a lunch break that she was able to be called on and that Destiny did not call her on. She set timers for how long Beck could be away from the house, and even going to the point of asking Beck how long Beck would be away and then making the time that they were allowed to be away shorter than that time. After Beck, we have Feline, which we know that it bothered Amber greatly that Feline would not just quit her job and be at home with Amber all the time. She said that she could afford it, but that Feline just wasn't willing to quit. After Feline, we get Valentine, which again, we hear from Amber and from Valentine that she really did not care for times when she would text Valentine in the morning and not get a response back away. She was jealous of Valentine's wife because, yes, if you are not following Girl World at this time, Valentine was a married woman that Amberlynn was carrying on an affair with. After Valentine, we get into Tommy, and we all know how that was. I just did a video not that long ago about an argument where Tommy was literally like, oh my gosh, Amber, you need to go into the house. I just need space. And Amber would not let that occur. Amber had to stay there and be with Tommy to get her own emotional regulation, saying things like, I can't leave the argument until it's resolved. I don't want to leave things in a bad way. She did not care about how Tommy wanted to process the argument. She just needed her own emotional regulation via her partner, if that makes sense. Beyond not knowing how to emotionally regulate herself, she also had a really big habit of mirroring. So I did look up why people mirror just to get a greater understanding, and this blurb that I found, which I will have the source cited below, says, mirroring occurs when people with personality disorders have a vacant or distorted self-image, which can manifest itself as an imitation of another person's speech, mannerisms, behaviors, dress styles, purchase preferences, or daily habits. Basically saying that people can borrow elements of the other person's life, such as relationships, past experiences, career, or family history, and claim these as their own. Which, if we're thinking about Amber, we know that with every girlfriend she's ever been with, her personality has shifted to match that person's personality. And sometimes that also included how they dressed, behaviors that they did, the little vocal stims that she does where she just takes something that a partner says and implements that into her daily speech. And then it even references borrowing elements of the other person's life, such as relationships, past experiences, things like that, which we know she has a history of taking experiences that other people have had and claiming them as her own, such as her coming out story, which she pretty much lifted directly from Casey's coming out story.
And so because of this mistreatment and because they have insecure attachment and because they lack a self, they need to figure out a way to cope with all that because it's very painful and very scary and very lonely. And so they need to cope with the fact that they're not able to get their needs met. So children have needs for attachment, right? They need to feel secure and loved and safe. So they need to develop some way of coping with that. And also they need to develop some way of coping with the fact that they don't really know what they want, they don't really know their emotions, and they don't really know how to soothe themselves. So they do a lot of trial and error. And over time, we're talking early in life, the trial and error happens. They develop a pattern of thinking and behavior that helps them get through the day. And they figure out how to get a little bit of love and attention, and they figure out how to structure their personalities so that they can cope with severe insecurity and loneliness. Now, this is not a conscious trial and error process. It's mostly an unconscious process. These patterns in the children become fixed over time, particularly because they often grow up in fairly stable systems where their mistreatment is sustained over time. And so they develop a fixed personality and a fixed attachment style and a fixed way of coping with all this terribleness that is functional when they're children, because it's absolutely the only way that they can get love and attention. It's the only way they can cope. But then when they go into adulthood and they actually move away from the mistreatment, move away from the abuse, they still retain that personality. They still retain that attachment style and that coping style. And it becomes dysfunctional usually for them at that point.
Everything Dr. Honda is saying makes so much sense to me, because we can obviously see how she was neglected, no matter how you slice it, in childhood, because even by her parents' own admission and records, we can see that there was mistreatment going on in the home, as well as neglect because of substance use. And so it's very easy to see where she was missing that love and attention. And then seeing how, as a child, it looked like she was lifted up or had more attention put on her when she was winning these little contests or being exceptionally good at something. Or on the flip side, when she was engaging in bullying, we can see those same behaviors carrying through to today, where she feels like these little accomplishments she has to get so proud over because an accomplishment is just a gateway to attention for her. Same thing with the bullying, where we can see that when she's not getting enough attention, when she's feeling overlooked, she will lash out at others in order to kind of get the spotlight back onto herself. And just like Dr. Honda said, as a child, these things can fly. The bullying's not that great, but the being proud of yourself part, like, that's not a big deal. Like, nobody looks at a child twice if they want to be proud of themselves for something very, very small. However, when you become an adult, it's expected that you will grow and mature and change and be able to evaluate what accomplishments deserve a spotlight versus what accomplishments do not deserve a spotlight. Additionally, Amber does tend to push people away because of the fact that she can't figure out how to emotionally regulate herself, nor can she figure out a personality for herself. A person who has grown and matured typically develops like hobbies and things that they want to do outside of their partner, and that just never really seemed to happen with Amber.
All right, so let's get into the different personality disorders. So I'm going to describe all three in the same sort of way to help delineate the ones and also show how they're very similar. So first we have narcissistic personality disorder. For people with narcissistic, they figured out that they can get a little bit of love and attention if they uphold a superior attitude and persona. So they prop up this grandiose false self, and they actually manage to get a little bit of love and attention. Whereas if they didn't, come across like a superior being, then they don't get any love and attention.
Someone asked me, Amberlynn, do you think you're YouTube famous? And I'm like, no. Then they said, Amberlynn, do you know that people make hate videos about you? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, do you know that people make videos about you because they like you? And I'm like, yeah. And they said, well, what do you think about that? I said, I guess I'm YouTube famous. This was amazing. I am currently wearing my Fitbit. It's super loose on me. I know like there were some haters in the comments who were like, that ain't gonna fit her, but honey, look at the extra. This is so amazing. I have taken 1.6K, 1,600 steps so far today, which is not the greatest. You're supposed to take 10,000 according to the Heart Association place, but I mean, the fact that I've taken that many, I'm proud of that within myself. I gained 3.5 pounds, sadly. Of course, it could have been drastically worse, let's be real. I just noticed that like my off track now is so much better than like what my off track used to look like. So I'm just like really proud of that.
As I said, we see her being proud of these accomplishments that are really not things that the average adult would be proud of. She's, first of all, proud of her YouTube platform, which I'm not saying that that's abnormal, but to be proud of being so successful off of people hating you is a little bit weird, and especially to call it YouTube famous when she did not have the following that I would consider you needing to have to be YouTube famous. Even to this day, she has not hit like millions of subscribers or anything like that. She's definitely a sub niche. And I'm not saying that to put her down. I'm just saying genuinely, I think that to be super proud of that and calling that YouTube famous is a little bit bizarre. But if you guys disagree, you can feel free to let me know in the comments. And then in the next clip, she's like excited that a Fitbit like fits around her wrist, which again, it's like, I can see being proud of that if it at one point didn't, and then you're proud because you've lost weight and now it does. But for her, it just seems like she's like flaunting it, like, ooh, look, I'm skinny. And it's like, that shouldn't be an accomplishment for a Fitbit to fit around your wrist. And then she celebrates having less than 2,000 steps in a day, which, you know, I don't agree that you have to shoot for the 10,000 steps a day. I think that it's shown that 8,000 steps is enough to get yourself into that heart healthy area, but I think the average person takes about 4,000. So she is proud of herself for not even taking an average person's amount of steps. And this was not right off the back of her being bedbound or anything like that. So again, just a weird accomplishment to get so grandiose about and be like, oh my gosh, can you guys believe that I did it? And then the last one is almost like the most crazy example, because she gains 3 pounds as somebody who is over 400 pounds. I'm not going to speculate to how much she weighed at that time just because I don't have it off the top of my head. So at least 400 pounds at that time, celebrating a gain of 3 pounds because it could be worse. So constantly we see her building herself up over these accomplishments that are not real accomplishments.
And they also figure out that they can get a little bit of love and attention if they suppress their attachment needs. So if they are pathologically independent, if they convince themselves that they don't need anybody, they're totally fine on their own, and they can live life without being attached to anybody. So that's how they deal with this difficulty of getting love and attachment. They convince themselves they don't need anybody, and they also uphold this grandiose self. And it can be summarized by the following self-statement. I will make sure that I am superior to others, so I will attract others to me, and so I won't be needy of other people because I'm superior. So that's the self-statement.
Are you looking for a girlfriend right now? No. I want to be single. I don't want to be in a relationship. It's not something that like I'm looking for, which is crazy because it's like, I feel like I've always been in a relationship or just like looking for one. And right now I'm like, no. There is some love life drama behind the scenes that I'm not going to talk about. Things that I do deal with on a day-to-day basis, which could probably seem confusing now that I've even brought it up.
At first, when Dr. Honda said that they claim to be self-sufficient and that they don't need anybody, I was like, oh, I don't know if that really sounds like Amber, because she's always pretty much been in relationships. She's obviously very dependent on people. And when she is in relationships, she's very, very clingy, which she has admitted to at times. But then I thought about it, and obviously I was able to pull that clip, but she does, when she is broken up with somebody, she says she's looking forward to her single era. She can't wait to be single. She doesn't need anybody. And very frequently, she is back with somebody very, very quickly. So even in that clip, she says that she is not looking for a romantic partner, but don't worry, she has people in her DMs that do want to claim her. And then even now with Tommy, I guess they're together still, as far as I know. She's with Tommy, and she has said multiple times that even if Tommy wanted to move in with her, she wouldn't want to move in with Tommy because she just loves living alone in her apartment, when really we all can see right through her. We know the truth is that Tommy is the one laying down the boundary and saying, hey, I don't want to live with you. This is how the relationship has to be if you want to proceed, because we're very toxic when we are physically together. If Tommy came today and was like, hey, Amber, I would love to move in together and get married, Amber would 100% take that up. Granted, that is just my opinion. I can't guarantee it, but it's just, that's the vibe that Amber gives off, that she desperately needs to be in these relationships. She desperately needs to be with somebody, but she also can't bear the thought of appearing like she's not getting something that she wants. And so she does play very cat-like attitudes of like, oh, well, I don't really care about that. It's just, you know, if I have it, then that's good, but I don't really care about it. Meanwhile, she's constantly chasing that.
And their superior is a defense against their feelings of inferiority, their feelings of emptiness, and their feelings of loneliness. But it always backfires for them when they're an adult, because they tend to make other people feel very small and unsafe, which naturally pushes people away. And this perpetuates their feelings of inferiority and loneliness because everyone's running away from them. So they resort to defensively rejecting others and focusing on their grandiose self and convincing themselves they don't need anybody, which again pushes people away. And then the cycle just goes on and on and on. So that original mistreatment from their caregivers growing up, through their personality later in life as an adult, they tend to recreate that mistreatment in other people. So their mistreatment is extended throughout their life until they recover. All right, what about borderline personality disorder? Well, for these people early in life, through trial and error, subconsciously, they figured out that they can get a little bit of love and attention if they, one, become hypervigilant about the emotional states of other people. So they become hyper aware of the emotional state of their caregivers, because then they are able to predict and manage what's happening, and they don't focus on themselves, by the way. And two, they figure out they can get a little bit of love and attention if they micromanage that emotional state in the other person, for the benefit of keeping that person stable and close to them, because they need their parents to be stable and close to them. Now, it never really succeeds because the parents are struggling, or the caregivers are struggling with whatever they're struggling with. But they get a little bit more love and attention, a little bit more attachment security when they're hyper aware of what the other person is doing and try to control it through their own reactivity. This can be summarized by the following self-statement: I will make sure to pay very close attention to others so I can make sure that they won't hurt me.
Once again, I just don't see that fitting Amberlynn. If you guys can think of examples that I'm missing, then please let me know. But I really racked my brain, and while I can think of a million times that she has ignored what somebody else has been feeling, I can't think of a single time where it seemed obvious that she was really in tune with what that person was thinking. I know she has the ability to do it, because that is a key aspect of manipulation, is that you do have to know how somebody else is feeling in order to manipulate that. But even when we see her trying to make somebody feel bad on purpose, it's very over the top and on the nose. And so I don't think that she's especially gifted at this. I think that it is just something where she has some, because she is able to at least a little bit understand what people might be feeling, but I don't think that she is in tune with this to the point where we could say that it's definitely a symptom of borderline. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that she's lied about being diagnosed with borderline or that we know the full story, but it is a common misdiagnosis to get diagnosed with borderline. And also, we do know that Amber has a tendency to fudge where she's gotten her diagnoses from. So I can't say 100% that she has gotten this diagnosis. If she has gotten the diagnosis, I can't say 100% that that is a correct diagnosis. Clearly, I'm not saying that I know more than a licensed clinician, but I am just saying that this is something that does get misdiagnosed frequently, and they are relying on Amber self-reporting in order to make these diagnoses. So, we just have to take all of that into consideration.
So that summarizes that. So this hypervigilance is a defense against their feelings of abandonment primarily, and which results in also feelings of emptiness and loneliness. But of course, it backfires when they're an adult because they tend to make others feel rejected and unsafe. And this perpetuates, as people move away from them, they feel abandoned again and they feel lonely and worthless. So they resort to defensively maybe rejecting the person, maybe moving on to a new person or trying to control the person. And they attach to people very quickly, which eventually backfires because they tend to, because of their personality and their defensive style, they tend to make other people feel trapped and rejected and unsafe, which again pushes people away, or at least they start to sort of move away. The person feels abandoned again, and the cycle just goes on and on.
Now, aside from rejecting other people, that really does sound a lot like Amber. Once she has been rejected, we definitely see a lot of that pushing away of the other person by trying to keep them close, which, like Dr. Honda says, just backfires. We definitely see her trying to control her partners. We can see that with Beck and how controlling that Amber was of their time. We can see that with Tommy and how controlling Amber was to like bring all of her pets up there and just bulldoze through the 3 weeks that she was supposed to be their absolute max. There's lots of times where she has been controlling of her partners. She also does attach to people quickly, and when she has been rejected, she moves on very quickly. I mean, there is barely any time between these girlfriends that she has, and she always tries to blame it on the fact that she's a lesbian and that U-Haul lesbians exist for a reason. But no matter how you spin it, it's not safe or like good for yourself to be consistently moving on from partner to partner to partner to partner, especially with the reputation that Amberlynn has online, which she has been burned for a couple of times by accidentally engaging with a hater because she is just so eager to move on really, really quickly. And she does have a tendency to make other people feel trapped and unsafe. I mean, we heard Beck say that they felt trapped in the relationship and that their family saw that they were trapped in the relationship and that they felt unsafe at times because if Amber had the ability to be physically violent, that they thought that she would be. And we also hear from Destiny as well as from Valentine that they felt trapped in that relationship as well. So Amber certainly does have a tendency to make people feel trapped and unsafe, especially Tommy is a perfect example of making somebody feel unsafe. So she does display these aspects of BPD.
But right from the beginning, I hope you can tell there are massive overlaps between narcissism and borderline. They're just slight shades different. And a lot of people, when I actually assess them and treat them, we find that they have some narcissistic traits and some borderline traits. Sometimes they're right in the middle, or sometimes it depends on what relationship they're in. If a narcissistic person is involved with another narcissistic person, then it might actually push one of them to become more borderline. But I digress. Let's go into histrionic personality disorder. So for these people early in life, they figured out that they can get a little bit of love and attention if they, one, get people to notice them. They need people to notice them. And when they're children, and they can be very expansive with their emotional state or seductive through sex or power or some other method, they figured out that if they become very noticeable, then people will actually turn to them and pay attention to them and maybe give them a little bit of love. And when they were children, if they didn't do that, they wouldn't get any love and attention, or very little anyway. This disorder can be, or this condition, this personality type, can be summarized by the following self-statement: I will make sure that people will notice me so they won't ignore me and eventually hurt me.
As we discussed earlier, and I'm going to briefly just recap, she does display things like being very hypersexual as a child, where she had that little note where she was going to ask her friend to have sex with her, as well as getting attention through bullying. And then I'm going to insert a couple of clips here where we can see even as an adult, she really does rely on sexual attention, especially from men, in order to fulfill that need for attention, which could potentially be because of the fact that her father was the most absent from her life.
Hold on. There's a guy over there totally looking at me. Look at him. Look at him. Do you see him? I know, I must be. That must be some sexier. Okay. Anyways. And I'm over here like, do you know how much dick I can get? It'll make your guys' head fucking spin.
The night for me was honestly from the very beginning so adventurous. I don't know if it's the fairy hair. I don't know if it's because I have my hair parted like this. I don't know if it's the bomb ass eyeliner. I don't know if it's the dress. I don't know what it is. Long story short, I made quite a few friends, got some numbers, but there was a lot of guys out that I guess likes a bigger girl. But there was this one guy in particular, after I was like complimented by tons of other guys, and it was so funny. This one guy called me gorgeous.
So these people hyper communicate their emotional state to other people in an attempt to draw people towards them. This is all a defense against their feelings of being invisible, not being good enough, feeling empty, and feeling lonely. But of course, like with the others, it backfires because they tend to make other people feel invisible, ignored, and unsafe. So I hope another parallel here that you can see between these different disorders is these different personality types is whatever they're feeling, and they're feeling abandoned, or they're feeling ignored, or they're feeling unimportant, then they tend to do things that make other people feel like the way they do on the inside.
Guess what Becky's doing tomorrow?
I'm going to my family's away from here a good 2-3 hours.
But yeah, she's leaving and I'm sad about it. I'm not going because I won't be able to stay in the car for that long, and like there's no hotels. And I just don't feel comfortable staying at someone's house. But yeah, I'm gonna miss her. She's gonna be gone for like 3-4 days. 2 nights. Babe, don't go.
The day of the We Broke Up live stream was really stressful. She spent the day asking me if I was sure about my decision, guilting me about how she wasn't sure what she would do without me, trying her hardest to make me feel awful. Like, obviously, whenever I broke up with her, it was just, she was just angry. You know, like, how dare I have the audacity? During that live stream and the following ones, it was obvious to me that she was trying to insult me and put me down to the audience. She really thought she was being clever.
Trying to make Becky feel bad for leaving you, huh? Question mark. Well, she proposed to me and we were in love and we had some of our future planned. So yeah, she should feel like fucking utter shit for breaking my heart.
So obviously Amberlynn will purposefully try to make people feel bad when she feels bad. It's kind of one of those, like, if you're going to rain on my parade, I'm going to rain on yours kind of things. Obviously what Dr. Honda is talking about is a more subconscious cycle, not necessarily just the manipulation, but I did want to put that in here as well because I do think that that helps to highlight the narcissistic personality traits that she has if she doesn't have the full-blown disorder, because obviously a huge part of that is thinking that you are queen bee, center of the earth, and that however you're feeling is more important than, for example, Beck wanting to go and see their family. However, in terms of like the subconscious part, we can definitely see how Amber is so afraid to lose somebody and be abandoned that she frequently like makes them be close to her in a way that causes them to want to run. Rather than giving, like, for example, Tommy or Beck space so that they could freely go out into the world, do their own thing, and come back refreshed and ready to provide the love that Amberlynn wanted from them, she would feel like she had to control them coming back because she just couldn't trust that they would come back on their own. As a result of her feeling abandoned, she made them feel trapped, which just re-perpetuates the fact that she is going to feel abandoned because it makes them feel that they are unimportant and don't have the ability to go live their life, because Amber herself is feeling unimportant and like she's going to lose them, if that kind of makes sense to you guys.
So histrionic people, they tend to make other people feel invisible, not good enough, ignored, and unsafe. And that's the way they felt when they were growing up. And that's the way they perpetually feel even as an adult. And by making other people feel not good enough and invisible and not mattering, then this pushes people away. And this causes the histrionic person, again, to feel lonely and as if they don't matter to anybody. So they, again, resort to becoming even more expansive with their feelings in an attempt to draw people towards them. Now, with histrionic people, old relationships will tend to drift away because they've seen the cycle, but new relationships, they don't know the cycle, and so they'll be attracted to the histrionic person.
She should feel like fucking utter shit for breaking my heart.
Who's to say I don't? I can't be taking care of this and that and the other whenever I'm over here barely able to take care of myself. I just want to be selfish.
You have been.
I'm talking about, like, I've never been
joking.
allowed to just think of me.
Yeah, because you've been in a relationship for over 4 years.
So clearly, Amber did make Beck feel the same way that Dr. Honda said that a histrionic person would make a partner feel. There's examples from other relationships, but just to cover it thoroughly, I'm going to focus on Amber's relationship with Beck. So Amber did make Beck feel invisible, and we can tell that because Beck described wanting to get out of the relationship in order to grieve properly for the loss of their mother, as well as to get their health taken care of. And Beck describes this as wanting to be selfish for once. Now, I can't think of a world where wanting to take care of yourself mentally and physically is selfish. That is just something that as a human, you should be allowed to do. So clearly, Beck was feeling not good enough, not worthy to take care of themselves. And Amber was the root cause for that because Amber didn't care when Beck was zombied out, in Beck's words. Amber didn't care when Beck didn't want to do things. There was the whole timer situation with not just the leaving the house aspect, but Amber would set timers for Beck to do what Amber calls an anxiety massage. And if Beck said that they didn't want to do it anymore, she would pause the timer and make sure that when they returned, that the timer would start again so that Beck was required to do the amount of massage that Amber wanted. And Beck even recalled times where Amber would not reset the massage because Amber didn't care about their time. Obviously, that's going to make anybody feel ignored and like they're not worth it as like their own individual person to get universal rights. Like everybody should have the right to stop doing things when they don't want to do that activity anymore. Additionally, like I said, Beck clearly did feel unsafe, and Beck's family felt that Beck was in an unsafe relationship. Beck's family orchestrated an entire intervention to get Beck away from Amber because they didn't think that Amber was fulfilling Beck's needs or making Beck feel wanted or safe. They felt that Beck was being emotionally abused, that her time was being accounted for, that it was a situation that was not safe for a person to be in. And I know Beck's mother feared that Beck would never get out of that relationship. So I definitely think that, unfortunately, Amber does fit what Dr. Honda is saying about this histrionic personality disorder. And just to be clear, while I do have my speculations about what disorders Amber has or doesn't have, I don't take any like satisfaction in being right or wrong. Like if you guys agree with me or disagree with me, I think it's interesting because I am interested in psychology. But at the end of the day, we have a person who has gone through multiple people's lives, making them feel ignored, unsafe, and just like not worth it as a person. And so regardless of how we want to label that, I think it's very sad and disgusting.
Histrionic people, they make other people feel like they don't matter. Old relationships will slough off. New relationships will be like, ooh, this person seems exciting. They'll get attracted to that. And the cycle just, begins all again and again.
We know that Amber's relationships do start and end in this manner. So she starts her relationships. Everybody is like, oh, I didn't believe the haters. I thought that this was just like, overblown internet drama. They start talking to her. They think she's so sweet, that she's just misunderstood deeply. And then by the time that they get through the relationship and out on the other side, I mean, none of her exes still talk to her as far as we know. Maybe Crystal, I've seen a couple of people say that, but I really honestly doubt it. I have not seen anywhere where she has talked to Crystal. She certainly is not talking to Casey anymore. She doesn't talk to Beck or Destiny anymore from what we know. She doesn't talk to Feline from what we know. And it just does seem like as soon as she is done with a relationship, those people cut and run. I mean, even at the end of her relationship with Feline didn't even want to drive her to the next girlfriend's house, which she had already promised to do because things were just so bad in that relationship.
So, summary. Again, all these people with these personalities, they all go through mistreatment, and through trial and error, they all develop a personality and a style of coping that reduces their inner distress and helps them to gain a little bit more love and attention. This personality and this coping strategy is helpful when they're children, but as an adult, their personality and coping style perpetuates their pain by pushing people away and making them feel the way they did when they were children, which furthers their feelings of worthlessness and emptiness. So this might all seem quite hopeless and demoralizing, right? But Here's the thing. Research shows that therapists, such as myself and the thousands of other therapists around the world, can actually reduce symptoms of this personality, in essence, changing that personality or helping people to adapt and adopt a new style of coping and a new style of gaining attachment from others, cultivating attachments.
I did just want to include that last part from Dr. Honda because he posts all of his YouTube videos in an effort to educate and entertain at the same time. But I wanted you guys to see that if you are relating to any parts of these videos that I'm talking about where I do quote Dr. Honda, it's not a hopeless situation. You can get help. Amber could get help. She just chooses not to. So, it's not bad to have a personality disorder. It is something that most people have no control over. The issue is just when you don't take any action for it and you let it fester the way that Amber has, to where now it's not just something that she's going through, it's something that she is putting on to others. That being said, let me know what you guys think. Do you think she has borderline? Do you think she has histrionic? Where do you fall on the narcissistic problem? Do you think that she has narcissistic personality disorder or just narcissistic traits? Is there any clips that I left out that you felt would have swayed your opinion one way or the other that I should have included? Let me know all of that. I am going to do another video similar to this in the future, focusing solely on the histrionic portion, I believe. If you guys are interested in that, just let me know. But other than that, if you made it this far, you already know. Stay Delulu, but not that Delulu. I'll catch you in the next one.